This is one of those stories, a story about a tragedy that, frankly, could have been prevented. And it's about a massive legal battle that really just asked one simple but devastating question. Who's responsible when a nation fails to protect its own people? So today, we're going to dive deep into this Supreme Court case on Sri Lanka's Easter Sunday attacks. It's a case that really boils down to one powerful word: inaction.
So those are the actual words from Sri Lanka's highest court. And you can just feel the weight of them, right? They're setting the stage for a legal fight that isn't just about what happened on that tragic day, but, and this is the crucial part, it's about what didn't happen in all the days leading up to it. Okay, before we get into all the legal arguments and the documents, we have to just stop for a second and remember the human cost here. Over 200 people gone, and so many more were horribly injured. That number, that's the stark, terrible reality behind every single petition, every court document we're about to unpack.
All right, let's start with Section 1, a nation reeling. We've got to begin on the day of the attack itself, a day that just shook the entire country to its absolute core. So picture this. It was Easter Sunday, one of the most sacred days of the year. Churches were packed with worshipers, hotels were filled with families enjoying the holiday. And then, a series of coordinated explosions. They were clearly designed for one thing: maximum devastation. What was left was just a trail of destruction and a whole nation in shock and mourning. Okay, moving on to Section 2, the core accusation, which is inaction. Because in the aftermath of all that horror, the nation's shock, well, it turned into anger pretty quickly. And all that anger was centered around one single burning question. And this is the question that you heard everywhere, echoing across the country, until it finally landed right on the steps of the Supreme Court. Was this just a tragic, unavoidable act of terror? Or was it a catastrophe that could have been prevented? The people bringing the case, they were arguing for the latter, for sure. So right at the heart of this whole case is this really powerful legal idea: executive inaction. Let me break it down for you. Think of it like this. The government has a basic, fundamental duty to keep you safe, right? And the petitioners argued that by completely failing to act on crystal clear warnings, top officials didn't just mess up, they actually violated the people's most basic right to life and security. And listen to the language they used in the court documents. It's so telling. They called it a reckless failure. So this wasn't being framed as, a simple mistake or some kind of oversight. No, the accusation was way stronger. It was about a complete and, frankly, willful disregard for intelligence that was specific, credible, and came in on time. Which brings us to Section 3, petitioners versus the state. So who exactly was on each side of this huge legal showdown? Well, on one side, you had the people. We're talking about a grieving father who lost his own children, religious leaders demanding justice, and even the country's own bar association. And on the other side, the absolute highest levels of the state. We're talking the president himself, who, by the way, was also the Minister of Defense, along with all his top security and intelligence chiefs. It was the people versus their leaders. Okay, Section 4, the evidence on trial. So what was the actual evidence? What formed the backbone of this massive accusation of inaction? The court documents lay out this just chilling timeline. And look, the threat wasn't brand new. There had been signs of growing extremism since way back in 2015. But the real critical moment, that came on April 4th, 2019. 17 days, 17 whole days before the attack, specific foreign intelligence came in, detailing the plot. And yet, on April 21st, those warnings became a horrific, bloody reality. And the Supreme Court judgment uses this really powerful phrase. They said the government chose to turn a Nelsonian eye. Now, what does that mean? It basically refers to the act of deliberately ignoring something you absolutely know you should be looking at. The argument was the state didn't just miss the signals, they actively chose to ignore a catastrophe that was staring them right in the face. And this, right here, is where the case just becomes so damning. See all these warnings? They fell directly under the president's personal responsibilities as Minister of Defense. He had direct control over the police. He had direct control over the State Intelligence Service, the exact agencies that got the warnings. The argument was simple. The responsibility, the buck, it stopped right there, at the very top. All right, final section, number 5, a state's solemn duty. Because this case, even though it's so deeply rooted in this one awful Sri Lankan tragedy,
It raises questions that really resonate far, far beyond its borders.
When you really boil it down, this whole thing is about the most basic promise any government makes to its people, the promise of security. The court really looked at this idea that, hey, national security and the freedom of individuals, they aren't separate things. They're two sides of the same coin. And that's a solemn commitment the state absolutely has to uphold.
And to really ground its decision, the court reached way back in history. I'm talking over 800 years to the Magna Carta. Their point was that the state's promise to protect its citizens, that's not some modern invention. It's an ancient, solemn duty. So this wasn't just a failure of today's government. It was a breach of a fundamental trust that was established centuries and centuries ago.
So at the end of the day, this entire case forces all of us to confront a really, really unsettling question. What is the price of a government's inaction? The court suggests it's way more than just money or compensation. It's a price paid in human lives. It's paid in shattered public trust. It's paid by tearing apart the very social contract that holds a society together. And honestly, it's a question every single citizen everywhere should probably be asking.